Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that your best ideas never seem to arrive when you're staring at your screen? But somehow, they appear while you're walking to school, walking home, or even walking without thinking. Why? Here's the strange part: your brain, which uses only about 2% of your body's weight but consumes around 20% of your energy, actually performs better when your body is moving. Doesn't that sound backwards? You'd expect your brain to work best when you're sitting perfectly still. But nature had a different plan. For millions of years, humans didn't think first and walk later. They thought because they walked. Every step you take is like pressing the refresh button on your brain. Today, I want to show you why a simple walk can make you more creative, help you remember better, reduce stress, and maybe become the smartest habit you'll ever build. So let's take a walk through the science of the human brain. Have you ever been stuck on a difficult problem? Maybe you were trying to solve a math question, write an essay, or come up with an idea for a project. You sat there for 10 or 20 minutes, staring at the page, hoping that somehow the answer would magically appear. But nothing happened. Then you got up, walked to the kitchen for a glass of water, took a short walk outside, or simply walked around your room. Suddenly, out of nowhere, an idea appeared. It almost felt like your brain had been secretly working on the problem while you weren't paying attention. Most of us have experienced this, but we rarely stop to ask why it happens. Why do our best ideas come when we're walking, instead of when we're forcing ourselves to think? At first, it doesn't make much sense. You would expect your brain to work best when you're sitting quietly at a desk with complete focus. But surprisingly, our brains don't always work that way. Think about our ancestors for a moment. They didn't spend their days sitting in classrooms or offices. They walked for miles looking for food, exploring new places, and solving problems that could mean the difference between life and death. Their brains evolved while their bodies were moving. Walking wasn't something separate from thinking. It was part of thinking. Movement and intelligence grew together over millions of years. Now here's the interesting part. When you start walking, your brain doesn't switch off. In fact, it often becomes even better at making unexpected connections. Imagine your brain as a huge city filled with millions of roads. When you're stressed and trying too hard to find an answer, it's like there's a traffic jam. Everything slows down, thoughts become stuck. But walking is like opening all the roads again. Ideas that seemed unrelated suddenly connect, and your mind begins to explore new possibilities. That's why so many writers, scientists, inventors, and artists have loved taking walks. They weren't wasting time, they were creating the perfect environment for their minds to work. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs don't happen in front of a computer screen. They happen on a quiet path, a sidewalk, or even during a simple walk around the neighborhood. Walking also changes the way we pay attention. When you're sitting at a desk, your brain often becomes trapped on one single thought. You keep looking at the same problem from the same angle. But while walking, your attention relaxes. You notice the trees, the sky, the sound of birds, the people passing by. Your mind has the freedom to wander, and that's exactly when creativity begins. Your brain starts connecting memories, experiences, and ideas that seemed completely unrelated just a few moments earlier. Think of creativity like building with Lego bricks. The bricks are already there inside your brain. The challenge isn't creating new bricks. It's finding new ways to connect the ones you already have. Walking helps your brain make those new connections. That's why an ordinary person can suddenly think of an extraordinary idea while doing something as simple as putting one foot in front of the other. So the next time you feel stuck, don't assume you need to work harder. Maybe you don't need another hour staring at the screen. Maybe what your brain really needs is movement. Stand up. Go outside, walk around the block. Give your mind the space it has been asking for. You might discover that the solution wasn't missing at all. It was simply waiting for you to take the first step. Now, let's talk about something every student, every professional, and honestly every one of us wants. A better memory. Have you ever opened a book, read the same paragraph 3 or 4 times, and then realized you couldn't remember a single sentence? Or maybe you've spent hours preparing for an exam, only to forget everything the moment you sat in the examination hall. We've all been there. Most people think the solution is simple: just study longer. But what if I told you that sometimes the smartest thing you can do is not to keep sitting, but to get up and walk? It sounds almost too simple to be true. How could something as ordinary as walking help us remember more? The answer lies inside our brains. Think of your brain as a busy city. Every memory you create is like a message that has to travel from one place to another. For those messages to reach their destination, the roads need to be clear and there has to be enough energy to keep everything moving. Walking helps make that happen. The moment you begin walking, your heart starts beating a little faster. That extra heartbeat sends more oxygen and nutrient-rich blood to your brain. Your brain doesn't store oxygen the way your muscles do, so it constantly depends on a fresh supply. When more oxygen arrives, brain cells communicate more efficiently. It's almost like upgrading from a slow internet connection to high-speed Wi-Fi. Everything starts working more smoothly. But walking doesn't just help your brain work better for a few minutes. It also helps your brain grow stronger over time. Scientists have discovered that regular walking encourages the brain to build new connections between its nerve cells. Imagine your brain as a giant forest, filled with tiny paths. Every time you learn something new, you create a path. The more those paths connect, the easier it becomes to find information later. Walking helps build more of those paths, making learning faster and remembering easier. This is one reason teachers often encourage students to take short breaks instead of studying for 5 or 6 hours without moving. Your brain isn't designed to stay locked in one position all day. It needs movement, it needs fresh air, it needs circulation. Even a short 20-minute walk can help your brain reset, so that when you return to your work, you're more focused than before. Have you ever noticed that after sitting for hours, your mind starts to feel tired? You begin reading words without understanding them. Your eyes are open, but your brain feels asleep. That's mental fatigue. Walking is one of the simplest ways to wake your brain up again. It increases alertness without needing another cup of coffee or another energy drink. And here's something fascinating. Walking doesn't just help you remember facts. It helps you understand them. Memorizing something is one thing, but truly understanding it is completely different. When your brain is relaxed and well supplied with oxygen, it's much better at connecting ideas. Suddenly, a difficult math concept starts making sense. A complicated science chapter becomes easier to understand. A language you've been struggling to learn begins to feel more natural. Some people believe success comes from studying every minute of the day without stopping. But the brain doesn't work like a machine that becomes more productive the longer it runs. It works more like a garden. If you never water it, never let sunlight reach it, and never give it room to grow, it won't flourish. Walking is one of the simplest ways to give your brain exactly what it needs to stay healthy and productive. So the next time you're preparing for an important exam, writing a presentation, or trying to learn something new, remember this: don't spend the entire day glued to your chair. Take a short walk, stretch your legs, let your heart pump a little faster. Give your brain the oxygen, energy, and movement it needs. You may be surprised that when you come back, the information that once seemed impossible to remember suddenly feels clear, familiar, and easy to recall. Sometimes, learning more doesn't begin with opening another book. Sometimes, it begins with taking another step. Now, there is one more incredible reason why our brains love walking, and in my opinion, this might be the most important one. It has nothing to do with getting better grades or becoming more creative. It has something to do with something every single person in this room experiences: stress. Think about your day for a moment. From the moment we wake up, our minds are already busy. We think about deadlines, exams, assignments, work, family, notifications on our phones, messages we forgot to reply to, and problems we haven't solved yet. Even when we're sitting quietly, our minds often refuse to stay quiet. It's almost as if our brains have dozens of tabs open at the same time, just like a computer. After a while, everything begins to slow down. Have you ever had one of those days where even the smallest problem feels huge? Maybe someone says one negative thing to you, and suddenly your entire mood changes. Or maybe you're trying to make a simple decision, but your mind feels so overwhelmed that even choosing what to do next becomes difficult. That's what stress does. It doesn't just make us feel bad, it changes the way our brain works. When we're under stress, our brain becomes focused on survival instead of clear thinking. It's like trying to have a conversation while a fire alarm is ringing in the background. You can still hear people talking, but it's much harder to focus. In the same way, stress fills our minds with mental noise. It becomes difficult to concentrate, difficult to make good decisions, and even difficult to enjoy the things we normally love. Now, here's the amazing part. Walking is one of the simplest and most natural ways to quiet that noise. When you start walking, something begins to change. Your breathing becomes deeper. Your muscles start relaxing. Your heartbeat finds a comfortable rhythm. Gradually, your brain receives a message that says, "You're safe. You don't need to stay in emergency mode anymore." And when your brain feels safe, it starts thinking clearly again. You don't have to climb a mountain or run a marathon. Even a slow walk through a park, around your neighborhood, or across your school campus can make a difference. As your feet keep moving, your mind slowly lets go of unnecessary tension. Problems that seemed impossible a few minutes ago suddenly don't look so frightening anymore. The problems haven't disappeared, but your perspective has changed. Have you ever argued with someone and felt angry for hours? Sometimes the worst thing you can do is keep sitting there, replaying the conversation over and over in your head. But if you go outside and take a walk, something interesting happens. Your emotions begin to settle. Your thoughts become more balanced. By the time you return, you often realize that the situation wasn't as terrible as it first seemed. Walking also reminds us to pay attention to the world around us. We notice the breeze, the sound of birds, children laughing, leaves moving in the wind, or simply the rhythm of our own footsteps. For a few minutes, our minds stop racing into the future and stop replaying the past. We become fully present in the moment, and sometimes, being present is exactly what an exhausted brain needs. I think one of the biggest problems in today's world is that our brains rarely get a chance to rest. The moment we wake up, we check our phones. During breakfast, we scroll through social media. While studying, notifications interrupt us every few minutes. Even before going to sleep, many of us are still staring at a screen. Our minds are constantly receiving information, but they almost never get the opportunity to process it. Walking gives the brain that opportunity. It's like pressing the reset button. It creates a small space between us and our worries. It allows our thoughts to slow down just enough for us to think instead of simply reacting. And here's something I've learned. The smartest people aren't always the ones who work the longest hours. Often, they're the ones who know when to pause. They understand that taking a short walk isn't a sign of laziness. It's an investment in clearer thinking, better decisions, and better mental health. So the next time life feels overwhelming, don't assume you need to push yourself harder. Instead, give yourself permission to step outside. Leave your desk for a few minutes. Put your phone in your pocket. Walk without rushing. Let your mind breathe. You may discover that peace doesn't always come from finding all the answers. Sometimes, it comes from taking one quiet step after another. Because in the end, walking doesn't just move your body from one place to another. It moves your mind from confusion to clarity, from stress to calm, and from feeling overwhelmed to feeling in control. And perhaps that's why, after thousands of years of human history, something as simple as walking remains one of the greatest gifts we can give to our brains. The next time you're stuck, don't just sit there waiting for inspiration. Stand up. Take a walk. Because your brain wasn't designed to do its best work trapped in a chair. It was designed to think in motion. Thank you.